All right, welcome back to another killer edition of College Football Corner. Myself, Fletch, and Randy bringing it to you like nobody else can, giving you the real deal, the straight news, how it all works out, unbiased opinions and facts. Even though we're Buckeye and Bama lovers, we tell it like it is because that's the way you deserve to get it. Instead of from all these blowhards and the big networks that make a lot more money than we do. Of course, if I made that money, I'd probably say whatever they wanted to. The dogs would make.
There you go.
So, Randy, how was your week?
Yeah, it was good. It was good. Got through it, with all this COVID stuff and everything. So closing in on Christmas.
Yep. Same here. I feel like I'm avoiding COVID at different turns here at work and some school with my kids, but feel like it's keep walking by the sidewalk, looking at my house, but at some point it's going to come up and knock on my door. So we'll see what happens. So interesting week this week. All the major conference title games are all set for next week. So this is kind of like some teams aren't even playing. They were going to play, and they changed it either way. Kind of switched their schedule around and gave a bye week to the big teams. And then Ohio State was supposed to play the big game against Michigan. Then Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of speculation of did they not want to play them, or did they just want to break the streak of losing to them, so they didn't play the game? Or did they do them a favor by giving them a bye week where Northwestern's got to play? Interesting all the way around. So still, it's college football. One of the things that we love about college football compared to pro football is these games matter to these kids. I got some games highlighted. Michigan State, Penn State is one of them. Those kids still want to play that game. Penn State still wants to win, So those games will be fun to watch, even though they don't really have a vested interest in the conference and or the CFP for sure. But still good games, and none, I think, more interesting than maybe Florida, because that has a little bit of CFP written on it because of Florida's capability. I think they still got a good, decent chance of sliding in to the CFP.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they do.
So, but it is blowout Saturday, so we know Arkansas is going to have to go out there. They're probably ruining the day that they got to play Alabama. At least they got them at home, though. But so, what do you think about? I know you're saying you had some interesting topics. What do you want to get into first? Do you want to talk about CFP? You want to talk about some games, or what are you feeling right now?
Well, I think it's closing in so much on the college football playoffs, and of course, we can come up with all kinds of scenarios and what might happen. But I was telling you earlier that I think, oh boy, there's a storm of brewing on this whole college football playoff thing, and of course, it all depends on what happens in the in the conference championships. Because I mean, some of them are not a given. Notre Dame and Clemson,
Right.
and regardless of what some people think, I still think Florida and Alabama is another one.
Oh yeah.
So I don't, Ohio State's. I don't see them having any problem at all with Northwestern. But some of those other games, those other two conferences, and what happens in those games could factor in a lot, and certainly stir up a bunch of controversy over who is the best four teams to go into the playoffs.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Texas A&M, if any great payout, basically we talked about if Alabama completely blows out Florida, I should think blows out, but let's just say they beat them and it's not a really close game. And let's say Notre Dame really handles Clemson, to where you're just knocking out two teams there with two losses, and you get two undefeated teams, 1 and 2, Alabama, Notre Dame. Then you got Ohio State, who just basically has to beat Northwestern in this scenario, and they'll get in at number 3, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now you're talking, is Texas A&M that next team over Florida, which at that point they would be because they've already beat Florida, and Florida just got beat by Alabama. So Texas A&M doesn't play this week. They got another
right.
week, and they've played, I think, 9 games. So it's not like they haven't played the schedule. And much just at the end of you and me a little bit, they've kind of earned it in there. I know I went with you on them getting beat by
Auburn.
And it looked good for a while. I thought, all right, another check mark on the college football corner. And then Auburn just didn't have the horses to keep that net there in their corner. But it was a good game for a while. So it was nice though. But the chaos obviously is going to be, and we talked about that. But you already laid the groundwork for this. If Notre Dame does beat Clemson, and let's say it's a close game, let's say it's a field goal, just like the last one, double overtime, whatever.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Clemson's got 2 losses. They're both in Notre Dame. Notre Dame's number 2 in the country, depending on what happens to Alabama, which some think it's going to stay that way. Does Clemson have an argument to be number 4 over an unbeaten Ohio State or even a one-beaten A&M? Which
right.
Some people I think, 5 years in a row that Clemson's been there. Let's see somebody else in there, kind of a deal. Sometimes that can. When it's a team that's been there a bunch, think they had their chance, they beat twice. I do think the losses need to stand for something, so you just have to compare it to everything else that's going on. So it's an interesting dynamic. Now, if Clemson beats Notre Dame and Florida beats Alabama, now we have a whole slew of one-loss teams at the top.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, going, hey, wait a minute, and I don't know if Ohio State gets in on that. I'm a Buckeye fan. I would love to get him in. I just don't see him getting in under that scenario.
The best scenario for Ohio State is for Alabama to win and for Notre Dame to win, and then they're in. And I think in that scenario, Clemson is out. I don't see a 2-loss team getting in, regardless of who the 2 losses are to, or even if they truly are. Maybe possibly one of the top 4 teams in the country. They could be. Well, we're a pretty good team here, and our losses are to are to number 2 Notre Dame. But then you got Texas A&M sitting there and going, oh yeah, well our only loss is to number 1 Alabama.
Right.
So I think a 2-loss team. I don't see a 2-loss team getting in at all.
I don't disagree, especially with Texas A&M not playing this week. They would have played Ole Miss. That would have been an interesting game because if Ole Miss pulls that win, because we know they can light the scoreboard up at times, that puts Texas A&M at nowhere to be found. But sitting there 1 loss, having beaten Florida and having only lost to the best team in the country, that's a big staple for them to say, hey, we deserve to be over a 2-loss team, even if it is 2-loss Clemson.
Right.
And that's an argument I can't, I don't know if I'm an A&M fan, I'm making that argument. There's no doubt about it. If I'm Clemson and the roles reversed, I'm making that argument. So,
well, of course.
So, yeah, Dabo, he's lobbying for his kids in the school, and that makes sense. And every coach would do that. You understand that. But, I definitely think under that scenario that Clemson doesn't get in. If Alabama wins and Notre Dame wins, Ohio State becomes number 3, and I think A&M's number 4 because they're not going to play next week either. And I don't think any other games are really going to matter for that 4th spot.
Right.
It's almost like, and Cincinnati's just unfortunately had too many canceled games. It's not so much canceled games, but canceled games, and they're not Power 5. So that's working against them in 2 different ways. They've looked great, and a lot of people, including myself, would love to see them be able to play some of these teams to see what happens. But they'll probably get stuck in a New Year's 6 bowl game playing somebody really good, and then we'll see how they fare out from there. But I know if you want to do some little 8-game projection here or 18 projection.
Yeah. Well, let's
go ahead.
No, go ahead. That's fine.
Okay. Well, one of the topics I want to talk about is I'm going to mute my mic here so I can clear my throat. All right. Here it is right now. And I personally have no problem with the top 6. I think you could maybe flip a team or 2. I personally think Florida's a little better than A&M, but every time I say that, A&M just shows me why they're still there because they keep winning. So
they do.
You can't argue with winning, and I admit that. I'd love to see them play each other again. Maybe we will. In a bowl game, that's not going to matter. Although they usually don't put teams in the same conference in a bowl game, so it's probably the bowl game. But we got Alabama number 1. Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State. I think Clemson has had a better year than Ohio State. They've been more games. They've looked really good, and they haven't had the defensive look that Ohio State is going to. They've played some tight games, but not like what Ohio State was getting murdered by Rutgers with kitchen sink games to play and stuff like that. So if we expand it out, and I don't know what format we would do that, but let's just say we go to 8 teams, that gets Cincinnati in. Do you see a problem with the way it looks now, especially with Iowa State? 2 losses overall. One of them was to a Division II school, FCS, not an FBS school, but they have pretty much. I think they're going to play OU next week for the championship. So if they win that game, they'll be 9-3. They have won the conference championship. So there they are getting in, and now we're looking at. What do you do? Does Cincinnati play Alabama, or do you have a couple buys? Which I personally think you probably have 1 or 2 on a buy, and you play 3 through 8 or whatever. But what do you think about an 8-team playoff based on what it looks like right here on this ranking?
Well, I've always been for almost ever since it started. I've been for an 8-team playoff, and the thing before the season that we're having now with all the COVID and cancellations and all that was, well, how do we get all these games in there? Well, the way that I've had it laid out, you really don't lose any week. You just start, which would actually be the week after the conference championship was now a week or 2 weeks behind, a week behind, I guess.
Right.
So so next week would actually be the first round of the playoffs, and I think you just do a 1 verse 8, 2 verse 7. Just they're seeded,
Right.
at the strength that the powers think that they are, and you just play that. I mean, right away you're down to 4 teams.
Right.
And then so you get down to New Year's Day because the kids get they have finals, they have Christmas break, they have all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So you get to New Year's Day, you got the top 4, which narrows it down to the top 2, and they always play 2 weeks after that. So it doesn't really add or take away from anything that college football has done in the past with having those 8 teams. So
Right.
I've always thought that 8 teams is the way to go. Of course, you're going to have 9 and 10 sitting there going, hey, we got, we should have been in the top 8, but you're not going to get away from that, no matter how many teams that they put in. But I think 8 is ideal.
Right.
And of course, I always got to throw a prediction out there. Oklahoma will beat Iowa State. So Iowa State won't be in the top 8.
And that's very, very possible. There's no doubt about that. And if that happens, let's just look at this right here. If Iowa State gets beat by OU with 2 losses, do they jump everybody, including Cincinnati, or do they go to Cincinnati? Go to 7, they go to and they go to 8. Do they jump Georgia, Miami, or what are you looking at there?
Well, I think in that scenario, I think Oklahoma probably jumps probably 2 or 3 other teams. Of course, we got Miami in there, and we've kind of haven't talked about them much at all. Maybe they're not getting the respect that they deserve. And actually, I myself have been guilty of not giving Texas A&M
Right.
probably the spec because they just keep getting it done.
Yep.
And they've played some pretty good teams, and here they are with sitting at 7-1 with that one loss being to Alabama. I mean, it wasn't that close a game, but the way these high-powered offenses are, sometimes you're going to get you're going to get that 2 or 3 touchdown win.
Right. I personally think that they do tend to favor the Power 5, or it's not really a thing. It's just been that way with 4 teams in, no matter what. I think under this scenario, they would put Oklahoma. They would put them where Iowa State is. If they win, winner of that game is going to be in the 7th slot. Let's just say, keep Cincinnati at 8, especially Cincinnati's not playing, which it looks like they're not going to play. They might play next week against Tulsa, which would be a nice win. put them at 9-0, but I don't think it's going to jump them over a Power 5 conference champion. So if you've got OU where Iowa State is, now we're talking Alabama, Cincinnati. I could see where some Alabama people may say, why do we have to play this game? Because we might get somebody hurt, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, Cincinnati's going, hey, man, we're licking the chops. We got a chance to knock down the big dog. Let's go for it. So I think it's a good game. Then you got OU or Oklahoma playing Notre Dame. I think that's another great game. We're talking TV ratings here. People are going to watch this stuff.
Oh, I think Oklahoma versus Notre Dame, Clemson, or Ohio State. It would be a great game. I really do. I think Oklahoma has come on quite a bit here. I mean, they had a rough start, but they've come on pretty good. I mean, they look pretty good to me. So that'd be real interesting.
And then we got Clemson, Florida, and under this layout. And we know these things won't stay that way because of games they're going to play. But under this right here, it's Clemson, Florida, and Texas A&M, Ohio State, which a lot of people, ever since Ohio State had Michigan canceled, there's been a lot of these teams that said, hey, we'll play. And A&M was one of them, or at least fans of A&M, I should say. But looking at it more realistically, Florida is going to be out of there if Alabama beats them. And then Clemson and Notre Dame, one of those teams is going to be down. So now you're bringing up, I think Cincinnati comes back into the mix, or they're already in the mix with Iowa State, OU. So, does a Georgia and a Miami kind of sneak in with all that turmoil? Oh, does Clemson stay in the top 8, but not in the top 4? And so, therefore, they're going to be playing potentially an Ohio State at 3 when they're, a lot of interesting stuff, that's for sure. But I definitely 8 teams would favor Clemson if they got beat by Notre Dame a second time.
Well, Clemson probably still stays in the top 8 even if that happens. And going back to the Ohio State thing for this week, and I seen I get to chip a lot with Ohio State fans, being an Alabama guy here. So, and they were like, well, how about Texas A&M? And I said, well, how about Clemson? Hey, they're open too. But, as an Ohio State fan, you better be careful what you wish for, because you might just knock yourself clean out of the picture playing a top 5 team. So, if I'm a Ohio State fan, I'd prefer to play Michigan over Texas A&M or Clemson.
Yeah, so, and realistically, there isn't an athletic director in the Power 5 that's gonna take an open date a week before the conference championship.
Exactly.
Play a top 5 team. You're an idiot if you do that. And the other top 5 team, it would be an idiot as well. Sorry, it's just, I mean, why A&M wouldn't do that? Because A&M's sitting pretty right now. They're just waiting to see what happens. Another loss wouldn't do them any good,
None of those teams would want to do that. Hey, I got an idea. Let's play one of the top teams and just knock ourselves down to number 10 real quick here.
Yeah, ain't gonna happen. As much as people would love to see those games, and I do, I say if you expand it to 8, then we get those games, whether it's Ohio State or whoever, where you get those teams in there. I think this year is going to really show that 8 is just going to be really interesting. And we know the college fans were going to watch those games. There's still great matchups, great games that are going to matter. They're not cupcakes like the first round of the college basketball tournament or something. They're not that bad at all. So bad at all. They're great matchups. So yeah, I completely it sounds good on paper or whatever, but it's never going to happen on a game that doesn't mean anything. Just make it worse for yourself. So
right. Well, and then there's a there's a lot, there's a lot of talk of hey, how are you? So
but she's saying hey.
Hey.
He says hi. Go with mommy. All right. We'll get her on the broadcast in a few years.
There you go.
Just to learn more about the sport.
That's well, I was I was thinking, the whole Ohio State thing and this ranking. Like I said, it's just going to be really interesting. But I'm really excited about championship weekend. I think there's probably going to be at least one surprise, maybe 2.
Yeah, if looking at the games, championship weekend, it's going to be A friend of mine was like, "Hey, you want to do something next Saturday?" I'm like, I'm already doing something. I'm watching college football from sun up to sundown, but because they're all really good games that, in some manner or fashion, especially with the landscape, it does matter what happens in the Big 12 championship because they might slide in depending on what happens in another one. So they're all laid out nicely. From the Big Ten standpoint with Ohio State, I think they're probably going to win by maybe 3 touchdowns like you've been talking about all year. I think Northwestern does have a decent defense, maybe the best one they've seen. I don't know about Indiana. There might be a toss-up between them, but it's only going to be for a certain amount of time because for Northwestern to stay in the game, they're going to have to score points unless they somehow keep Ohio State on the bench, run the football, keep the ball away from them, keep them out of the end zone. I don't think it happens for 4 quarters, maybe a first quarter, but not for 4 quarters, especially on a fast track indoors in Indianapolis. It's just not going to happen.
Well, one of the things about, to beat one of those top teams, to beat Ohio State, to beat Alabama, the same way that Texas A&M beat Florida, keep them off the field.
Right.
One of the problems with a couple of those other teams are, Ohio State, they stop the run. So, I mean, they give up the pass.
Oh, yeah.
So that, that indicates to me if there's going to be, and we're going to see it in the playoffs. I have no doubt we're going to see some shootouts. We're going to see some high scoring games.
Yep.
But, a team, it's going to be hard for a team to come in against Ohio State and just control the ball by running it because they do stop the run so well. So, I mean, they're going to have to throw the football.
Yeah. Yeah. I completely agree. And I think most of the big teams we're talking about have that pedigree. They, I think Alabama stops the run pretty well in the passing game. Nobody's got the great just iron curtain this year on defense. So it's just going to be a matter of matchups and game planning and obviously turnovers and stuff like that to see how the games fall out. You look at it, you think, wow, Alabama, Florida, that's a really good looking game. That could end up being 45-10. Alabama, you just never know because
right.
See how it all plays out, and they're all kind of like that. But the scenarios this year is really, really unique. This week is not as unique as what we're going to see starting next week, and that is how it all falls out, who wins, who loses, and how they lose, and then how it all falls out for the final rankings. So it's a big puzzle, but it's going to be really interesting. Next Saturday is going to have a lot of probably the best, without a doubt, the best weekend of college football thus far this season.
Yeah, I was talking. I mean, you and I had talked about this before, and I was talking to a good friend of mine, which I give him a little shout out, John Austin, because he gave me a flat screen TV yesterday. So,
hey, that's a heck of a friend.
That's right. So we were, I was telling him yesterday that I don't know that that we'll see the shutdown defense anymore because of the way these offenses are. And you and I have talked about this before. And these offensive coordinators, well, they are really good of coming up with all these schemes and everything. And then you have the fact that the good old defensive back, hey, that receiver's going to think twice about crossing the middle, doesn't exist anymore because that guy's got to be concerned if he does put that big hit on, all of a sudden he's ejected from the game.
Yep.
So they've taken that away from the defenses also. So, I don't know that we might see a really good defense, but I don't think we're going to see a shutdown defense for some time right now with the way the rules are and the way the offensive coordinators are. And like I said, what they keep coming up with these offenses, moving people, and then, the athletes themselves and the speed of them. So I just don't think we're going to see that anymore. So, I mean, what lies ahead is probably more shootouts in college football.
I definitely agree. Sometimes it seems like it's been a circle where teams spread you out, go small and fast, and therefore you got to get out there with a nickel and cover everybody, and you're almost covering one-on-one when they got 4 or 5 wides, and then so if you try to blitz, you're leaving guys unprotected, trying to play the numbers, and then all of a sudden here comes a team with this monster back or somebody like in Iowa that says, we're not playing that football, we're loading up, we're just going to try to cram it down your throat. And they have good success at it. And maybe they win a game or an upset, but for the most part, it doesn't sustain for a whole season because, injuries and what, and it's, you just load the box and make them throw the football, and they're not good at throwing it. So now that it's this golden new era age of this Riley, Brian Day, Steve Sarkisian, Lane Kiffin, even the guy in Florida, Dan Mullins, just
Oh yeah.
offense where you never know who's going to get the ball. So many guys are open. So many guys are out in the play, and you really have to have your head on a swivel. And then, like you said, typically cover two defenses leave the middle of the field open, but that big hit jars the ball loose, and they don't have that anymore as much because you got to watch what you're doing. You got to make sure you're hitting them right, and it's targeting, but that's also the what they call that the
unprotected receiver.
Yeah, so if you're trying to catch the ball, you still can't. Yeah, it's just opened up the middle very well. We've seen a lot of, this year left in the last few years, a lot of plays going over the middle that go to the house because they can't have that big crunching hit blindside, especially when a guy's looking back for the ball and here comes the safety.
Oh yeah,
Ronnie Lott, and Ronnie Lott doesn't exist anymore in college football. So yeah.
Oh, and I love that. You used to watch. They used to have the highlight reels. The big hits, and and that just doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
Guys, the Ronnie Lotts of the world, and David Fulchers and Atwaters, and those kind of guys.
Oh yeah.
That just doesn't happen. Doesn't happen in college football, and it doesn't even happen in the NFL. So.
Yeah, they've taken it away, and I do agree. I saw a thing on this, and it is cutting down concussions and stuff, and it is making guys tackle a little better. And some of those hits were very violent anyways, and you do want to see guys stay in the game. So, it's just, it puts more points on the scoreboard. Fans like points. It puts a little more emphasis on offense. The game is adapting to that. So it may not necessarily be a bad thing. It isn't kind of what we're used to. When we grew up, it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust, 10-3, defense wins championships. Still, defense can play a big role in winning championships because if you can play any kind of defense, that gives you a good shot as long as your offense can score. Because
and if you look at the top teams, all those offenses can score. There's no doubt in my mind those offenses are going to score points. So I mean, what we've seen, and every time I go look at the stats to see what happened, that. A&M beat Florida and all that stuff. I look at it, and I was telling you before, 13 out of 15 third down conversions.
Yeah.
Well, that'll do it. And and then they get they're setting up the mismatches. But the big thing that we see is look at the turnovers. Look at the turnover ratio, and almost every time you look at a football game and you're thinking, well, what the heck happened here? You look at 4 turnovers. That's what happened.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what's going to come down to, in the next couple of weeks with all these great games coming up, is take care of the football.
Right. There's no doubt. And I did forget to mention one little thing, and that is, let me put it back up here. It's a sad but interesting state, and it's somewhat everybody saw it coming with as late as they got to start. But basically, the Pac-12 is just not in the conversation. And in addition to that, they've got so many more teams and games not being played. Oregon's missing another game this week. It's just, I think Big Ten started way too late, and they really hurt them. And they had to make an adjustment to their rules for the Big Ten championship game. For the most part, fans hate it on the Indiana side, if you will. But all the ADs and the athletic directors, they understand it. A 5-0 team, there's 2 reasons here. One, they're undefeated there. They beat the team that's behind them, talking about Ohio State. And monetarily speaking, you don't want a team that's got a serious chance to get into the CFP. You don't want to keep them from doing that because you're robbing your conference of a lot of money. And money drives the cost of football for the schools. For us, it's obviously the games and stuff. So, but with Pac-12 starting way late, like I think 3 weeks later than the Big Ten, it just really, really made it hard. I think the MAC started 1 week before the Pac-12, and I think Miami U is going to end up 2-1 on their season because they all the cancellations. So,
right.
I mean, you feel bad for the kids. They didn't get to play these games where if they would have started fine earlier, they would have had their issues to have gone through. Like was what the SEC and the ACC did. They just started and mulled their way through it here they are, and things are looking really good. So I wish all of college football would have done that, but that's a mute point. But
Well, yeah, and you're going to have, and you got some people, chiming in. You got the Indiana people and their coach and Dabo Sweeney, and I seen where the guy from Penn State, all making comments about what happened. Well, my opinion is the Big Ten tripped over their own feet on this thing.
yeah,
They actually canceled their season. And
yeah,
then they're like, oh, wait a minute. All these other teams are, they're playing, they're getting these games in. Okay, let's start the season, but now we're late doing it. And let's put in this silly rule that you got to play X amount of games. And then at the end of it, let's change that rule. Well,
right,
they should have never put the rule in the first place. It was never a good rule.
right.
And like I said, they tripped over their own feet, not starting their season on time, or, they easily could have started it at least a couple weeks before everybody else had 4 or 5 games in. So that really hurt the Big Ten. I think, it kind of made them look bad in the whole thing. And then the Pac-12, he looks even worse.
Yeah, yeah. It's a shame. It would have been nice if they all could have just started at least in the month of September, but they didn't. And we got what we got, So I think all in all, when it's all said and done, I still think it's going to be a good season to look back on. And I think there's, there could be some arguments with how good would have Oregon have been if they'd played a whole year. We'll never know, really, because they just had too many games canceled. They didn't play many games to begin with. So Oregon might have been an outlier, but most of the teams that we thought were going to be there are there right now, from the, so from that standpoint, it's, like I said, eight teams in, you still don't have a Pac-12 in right now, and it's not going to happen. So
right. And I'm not putting light on the whole COVID thing or saying anything about that. Because I know that's very real. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm shunning that part of it, because I know that's very real, and I realize why some of the conferences and teams did what they did. But I just my point is that if all these other teams are doing it, I'm sure that the Big Ten could have done it too.
Right. Yeah. And we had so much information by the time the season started when it came to demographics of who gets what. And, the way I always looked at it was nobody forces you to play college football or any sport. And if you feel like you or don't want to do it for any reason, you're high risk, then don't do it. And I don't mean that in a mean way, because I know these kids,
right.
Some of these kids are looking to have a future in the pros and all that. But overall, it's it's just like anything else. We don't need to shut down all these businesses. We don't need to shut down college football. We don't need to just do it in a way that is, because even without COVID, you never know when you go out in the field and play college football if you're not going to suffer an injury that could be very debilitating. It's just part of the game. COVID was just one other faction of it. And obviously, anybody that's watched this show knows that you know as much about COVID as anybody. You actually had it, and suffered through it, your wife and your daughter. So absolutely, so yeah, I don't, anybody who would say that isn't really saying it with a lot of brain power, to put it mildly. So you're watching any games today? Are you going to take the weekend off and kind of I guess you might watch Alabama. It's always nice to watch your team blow somebody out, right?
Well, I mean, I'm not one of those guys that's unrealistic or believes that, my team is just going to automatically, going to stomp everybody. I'm concerned. I get concerned regardless who they're playing until I see an end result.
Right.
I've coached high school baseball for, well over, it's been over 20 years now.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and I love doing it, but I'm also the kind of coach is, hey, we're up 7-2 here in the 6th inning. I'm still concerned, So I mean, that's just my nature. That I don't automatically say, and I've gone round and round with people that do, is oh, that's not a problem. We're going to blow right by them. Well, I've seen that not happen. Most of the time, yeah, but
right.
I just want to see an end result.
Sure. My wife usually will ask me on the day of a game, okay, are they expected to beat this team? Because she doesn't know who's good and who's not. And I'm like, well, they're supposed to kill this team, but you never know.
Yeah, but
So I
yeah.
want to see them kill the team. There's no doubt. I understand that. So I'll text you at halftime when it's, I'm guessing, 35-0. We'll talk about it then.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I'm skeptical of that. I'm really, and you'll hear this next week a whole lot. I'm really skeptical over this whole Florida thing.
Oh yeah, next week is going to be awesome.
I
And
mean, I just, that's going to be, hopefully they can get some turnovers and stuff. Otherwise, I just think that's going to be an Ole Miss Alabama game, and you're going to have some scoring.
yeah, in that game especially, if one team can get some sustained pressure on the quarterback, that might really affect the other team's ability to get the offense going. If Jones is running around, or if Trask is running around because he's not doesn't have a pocket to stay in.
Yeah, you ain't gonna see Jones. You ain't gonna see Jones run around. I can tell you that right now.
Well, I mean, if he's being chased, yeah, neither one of those guys are your Justin Fields type of guy where they're doing things. I mean, they're young, they can move a little bit. They're not
right.
Roethlisberger or anything, but they play from the pocket. So that's how running games, keep them off the field, and when they're on the field, you got to mask a bad secondary is a good front line, but has to be done. So
yeah,
all right.
I was talking with one of my friends / nemesis on this whole Alabama Ohio State thing, and he was telling me, well, I think we match up with Alabama and Clemson, and I don't, that's not going to be a problem. We're right there with them. And I'm just like, well, because we can score a lot of points. And I'm thinking, well, the thing here is they can score points too. And then, I mean, especially with Alabama, they got a little bit of running game. So, if I'm playing them and I'm an Ohio State fan or a Clemson fan or a Notre Dame fan, I'm concerned about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's, Ohio State had Indiana, which basically had a big lead, and Indiana fought back, and Ohio State gave up some ugly plays, but also Indiana made some really nice catches. I mean, it's a little bit of, but basically it ended up being a touchdown game. Alabama had Ole Miss go into the fourth quarter. Notre Dame and Clemson had a double overtime game. All these teams have seen the shootouts, so they've all done them. So when they all get together and they end up playing each other in this style, it's just going to be a matter of, like you said, turnovers. If you can create any types of defenses, get third down stops, and who's got the ball last? I mean, it could be nothing.
That could be the answer right there.
Right. You try to play it to where you're the last one with the ball. You score, and there's no time left because all these teams can. 2 plays can go goal line to goal line, so they all got speed and talent, and they're all a little bit different. I think like the wide receivers Alabama are great, and so are the ones at Ohio State, but they're great in different ways. The quarterbacks are great in different ways, even with Lawrence, so it's just going to be interesting. A lot of talent, a lot of offense, and it's just going to see who can roll up some sevens on defense and special teams and turnovers.
Well, I'm one of those. I'm an odd one because one of the things I'm tuning into when those kind of teams are playing, the coin flip. I want to know what's going to happen to coin flip because, if you win that and you defer to the second half, and you score at the end of the first half,
right,
that could be the difference in that ball game right there.
Oh, and traditionally, so many teams defer. They take their defense out there, try to get a 3 and out, and then get the lead. And like you said, they take the lead into the second half. Well, nowadays, teams aren't playing that great defense. I wonder if any of them are going to take the ball and try to get the first 7 on the board and then try to keep the lead. So it's an interesting dynamic. There's no doubt.
Well, that has happened a few times, but I think for the most part, they want to know. They're still going to have that opportunity to score at the end of the first half, and then they know exactly where they're at in the second half. And some teams are really good at making those adjustments. I think probably, 2 of the best that I've seen over the last few years of doing that is Clemson and Alabama.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they go in, you watch the first half, and you're thinking, oh, my God, what is going on here? They come out in the second half, and the adjustment they made. Clemson did it against Ohio State last year in the playoffs.
Oh, yeah.
So,
they were 16-0. Ohio State was winning the game and kind of dominating the play. And then the targeting and that happened, and a couple plays later, touchdown. But when the second half, it was a different ball game. All of a sudden, it was Lawrence and Travis Etienne, and Etienne's a stud. I mean, he's just a stud,
Yeah.
And he, a little 5-yard dump to him, and he takes it to the house because nobody could get to that guy. He was that much better. But yeah, it was a game. I mean, I hated to watch it, but I watched it. The dagger in the heart, but as much as I hated to see the controversial plays in that game, I don't know if it completely would have changed the outcome, because at the very end of the game, Ohio State was driving to try to win. I don't think it was going to be a tie; it was going to be a win. And Olave went in, or went out, and Fields went in on that pass for an interception. So they still had a chance. So,
well, sure, and that's what we're going to see.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to see coming up. So we're going to see that exact same kind of thing. It's going to come down right to the end, and it's going to be the same thing. It's either going to be, who had the ball last and scored, or who had the ball last and turned it over.
This week it's pizza and nachos. Next week it's nachos and Alka-Seltzer. The fourth quarter it'll be like plop plop. Oh my gosh, So, but it'll be fun though. It'll be fun. So, all right, man. Enjoyed it. Another great edition of the College Football Corner. We're going to put it to bed. Enjoy the day watching the games, whichever ones you watch. I'm going to tune into a couple. We all like the respective leagues. Like, I still like some of the Big Ten matchups, even though they're not going for anything other than pride. And pride's still great in college football. That's what's great about the sport. So, anything beside Arkansas you're planning on watching today? Anything intrigue you?
Well, how about Army Navy?
Is that this week?
Yeah.
Oh man, I somehow missed out on the schedule.
Yeah, you got to, you got to tune in. You have to tune in and watch that.
I'm used to that being all by itself. It just totally blew by me, because I was looking at LSU in Florida, thinking, that's a pretty decent, interesting game. Florida.
Well, you would think, but now LSU has fallen off the map now. They, they had their best player opt out to get ready for the NFL, and now they gave themselves a self-imposed ban. Yeah, we're going to ban ourselves from the from the bowls, because we're probably not going to make one anyway. So we're just banning ourselves from that.
Yeah, it's amazing what a great year it was last year, and after a year later, what they've come down to, and now all of a sudden it's like Ed Orgeron is probably, if he don't turn around next year, he's on a hot seat again, because he won't get any credit for what happened last year. It's going to be all Brady and Burrow, Which,
oh yeah,
I don't know if that's right or not. We'll just have to see how it plays out. But
right
this year, I mean, when I looked at that game, LSU and Florida, all I can remember is, what did LSU Florida last year? I remember that game.
Mm-hmm.
So does Florida. So this year, it's like the revenge tour. LSU has just to go play everybody they killed last year and get killed by that team.
Well, I mean, they gave so many teams chalkboard material, and now they're not able to back it up. So yeah, it's best sometimes just to keep your mouth shut.
Yeah, because you always got to play that team next year. There's no doubt about it. So. All right, man. Enjoy it, and we'll look to the CFP. I can't imagine the rankings making a whole big change this coming week, but we'll see what happens. And we'll gear up for Championship Saturday next week. We'll plan a big show, and we'll try to give away a McDonald's gift card. We'll have something involved. I don't know if we'll do a trivia question or something, but we'll see. We'll drew something up. So get the word.
We've been talking about that, so we got to have it for next week for Championship Week.
Yeah, so we'll get the word out on that, and we'll make it happen. So, all right, enjoy the games, and we'll see you next week. All right,
we'll see you.
Okay.